Hey everyone, I'm going to give you a few tips for test day for your AICE history exams. So starting with some general tips. Make sure that you use the restroom and get water before you start. That may sound like that is an obvious thing, but remember, if you have to go to the restroom during the test, you have to wait, because if you leave the test room, that's it for your test. Also, I would recommend getting a peppermint and sucking on a peppermint during the test. For some reason, that action has actually been shown that it can help you activate your brain a bit and get those good thoughts flowing. I would say also you could chew on gum instead, but you know how gum is with school. So avoid chewing on gum. Instead, pop a peppermint in your mouth if your invigilator will allow you to have it in the testing room. And as I've said in all my videos, write your notes in your response booklet, maybe with the exception of paper 1, because you might need to underline things or jot down notes next to the sources. But if you're doing maybe the agree or disagree chart or similar or differences chart, maybe you want to write that in your response booklet, because everything is scanned and they will read every single word that you write, and that might get you a point here or there. And that could be the difference between a U and an E. So first up, paper 1. Whenever you're prepping for your paper 1, make sure I would maybe peruse or read through the chapter that your paper 1 covers the night before your exam to maybe refresh up on content instead of practicing writing it. That you either know how to write it the night before your test or you don't know how to write it, but maybe freshening up on some content knowledge the night before might help you depending on which question you get, what subtopic you get on your paper 1. I recommend doing the B question first because it's worth the most points and can take up the most time. So I would do B first. That way, if you overwrite, you at least overwrote on the one that's worth more points. So do B first. I recommend giving yourself about 10 minutes to read through the sources and take some notes on them. Give yourself 30 minutes to write your B response, 15 minutes for your A. And if you do that, you have about a 5-minute wiggle room if you need a little bit more time to read your sources, or maybe a few more minutes on your A or your B. You have a 5-minute wiggle room. That way you don't get cut off in the middle of one of your responses. Looking again at the rubrics here, this is a rubric for part A of a paper 1. It goes from 0 to 4. Passing range is a level 3. To get a level 3, you need to both identify similarities and differences in your two sources. So do a paragraph on how they're similar and do a paragraph on how they're different. If you do that, identify a way they're similar and back it up with specific evidence from the sources. And remember, a similarity can if it's hard to do either similarities or differences, if you just can't find, let's say, a similarity, the two sources are just so different, but they're both from newspapers, then the fact that they're both from newspapers is your similarity, and that has come up on past AICE exams. But remember, one similarity, at least one similarity provided, back it up with evidence from both sources, and one difference, back it up with evidence from both sources. Do at least that, and you should be in the level 3, which can get you 8 to 11 points. To jump up to a 4, make that developed comparison. So you've identified similarities and you've identified your differences. Now, overall, do the sources, are they more similar? Are they more different? And how is that similarity or difference stronger? What makes these two sources more different than they are alike? And why is that significant? This is where you use your context knowledge that can get you those extra points to get you into that 12 to 15 marks range on this one. And if you get that 12 to 15 marks range on a paper 1A, you are looking really good for passing your AICE exam. And looking at the B, this one goes up to level 5. Once again, you need to get to that level 3 range. So you need to support and challenge the statement to get to that level 3 passing range. So you don't have to do that. You need to use all 4 sources, identify which ones challenge the prompt and which ones support it. Remember that a source might be neutral, and you might find evidence within one source where it's showing support and showing challenge, because sometimes sources kind of could argue both sides. But you need to make sure that at least one of your sources is supporting or challenging it. Yes, you can have 3 sources, let's say, supporting the statement and 1 source challenging the statement. That's fine. You're not going to always get 2 and 2. You might get 2 and 2, 2 sources support, 2 sources challenge, but that's not always the case. So don't necessarily look for that. to get to that 4 range. Evaluate them, really look at what's this is when you look at the purpose of the source, where it's coming from, how does it relate to the statement. That's where you're getting to that level 4. And that level 5 is, are you reaching a sustained judgment? So you've done what you've done in 4 and 3, and you're really clearly arguing with the sources, how these sources respond to the prompt. So overall, do these sources support or challenge the prompt? And you've used that evidence, and where you've really also analyzed reliability. So 4 is where you introduce reliability. 5 is where you really bring everything together and make a polished response. Moving on to paper 2. Paper 2 is where you get your big points at. I would recommend that you write the response you feel the most confident in first. After you look over the questions, which one is your stronger one that you're going to be able to knock out of the park? Write that one down first, because that will start getting you in a flow. Don't say, well, I'm going to do questions, let's say 9 and 10. And then you read question 9 first, and 9A you're lost on and you don't know the response to it, and you just get stuck because you feel like you have to write that one first. Don't do that, because you're going to get yourself in a negative flow for the day that might cause you to start getting more flustered. You might be more likely to forget things and get down on yourself. Instead, read the questions that you're thinking about responding to, pick the response that you feel the most confident in, and write it first. Keep in mind, you don't have to write the responses in any sort of order. You just have to make sure that you answer 2 questions in both parts of 2 questions. So if you want to do 9B first, you can do 9B first. Just make sure you label it appropriately so that the person scoring it knows what response they're reading. Also, if you have not picked 2 chapters to study in depth and maybe a third one, pick the 2 questions based off of the B. If you feel really confident about one of the Bs, answer that question, because the Bs are worth the most points on this one. So gauge which questions you want to select based on your B, unless you have picked 2 chapters to study in depth. Always P or peel in your response booklet, because once again, they read it. They will read everything you write in there. So once again, if you might get a point or 2, go for it. Do it. It doesn't hurt to do it. There's no point in just writing it in the question booklet, because no one's going to read that. Your teacher's going to get it the next day. Your teacher will see it, and they'll get to keep it. So don't write it in that book. Write it in your response book. And I would argue that suggest that you should give yourself 30 minutes to write both of the B's and 15 minutes for both of the A's, and that will take up your hour and a half. So watch your clock on that one. I'd recommend wearing a regular watch, no smart watches, obviously, no Apple Watches. A regular watch, I would keep that on, or watch the clock on the wall to make sure that you don't run over on time. The rubric for your 2A goes up to 10 points. 3 is your passing range, as always, and this is explain factors. So you're getting your 2A's are causation questions. You're getting your why questions. Give 2 well-explained paragraphs on each one a different cause, and you've hit your level 3. Make sure, though, you have that content, knowledge, and evidence to back up what you're saying. 2 different causes with very well supported with evidence, and you're in level 3. Now, if you want to explain what's the most important cause of the event and the question, that's where you hit your level 4 range. So 2 causes that are explained with evidence to get your level 3. To shoot up to level 4, what's the most significant cause, and explain why it's the most significant cause. That's how you get your level 4. And for your B's, this goes up to level 5. To get to your level 3, you need to develop an assessment, which means you need to, when you get the prompt, support the prompt and challenge the prompt. That's what you have to do. And make sure you're giving appropriately selected evidence. You have to give specific evidence. And what it means by your depth of evidence and or balance down there, it means, that's where you get the less points. What you really need to do here, support it and challenge it with evidence. To get up to level 4, that's where you have a really, really balanced argument. This might be where you're starting to attempt to argue that where either the prompt is accurate or the prompt is incorrect, or where you're really answering the prompt, where you're developing that sustained argument. You've argued both sides of it, and now you're starting to say which side is more accurate with evidence. If you do that and you do it weekly, you can fall into the level 4. And when you get up to that level 5, as you've just knocked out of the park, you have a sustained judgment or conclusion that you've developed and supported throughout your response using good evidence, and you've maintained focus on the prompt, and you can get up to a level 5 on that one. And as always, remember to relax. These questions basically have a formula to them. If you're confused about that, look at my other videos. I tell you what the formula is on how you answer these. It's really not hard to tick up to that level 3 on any one of these rubrics. It's very easy to do that. You just have to make sure that you're doing what its request asking you to do, such as with the 2A being a causation, give 2 causes and back it up with evidence. Or with the 1A, give evidence of how the 2 sources are similar and evidence of how the 2 sources are different, and you've gotten your level 3 in your passing range already there. If you're stuck on anything, especially on your paper 2, remember to write notes on absolutely anything you can remember and see if anything starts to click. Just start free thinking anything you know about the topic. Something might click, and then start responding to the question. And always make sure you write something down, and remember the keys to racking up those points on the rubric, and you should do fine. Good luck to you on your ACE exams. You guys have this. Best of luck.